Beautiful Tuesday morning in the city of Lagos. Good morning and welcome to Today in the News here in Vanguard Life. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Let's get started. First, the Vanguard newspaper. Major headline on the Vanguard says, Court stops PENGASSAN, others from quoting gas supply to Dangote refinery. We are not aware of any court order, PENGASSAN says. Barricades, NNPCL towers, NMDPRA, NUPRC as strikes begins. Major story can be found on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Presidency to Jonathan. Nigerians won't forget your dismal record in the office. Page 40. 2027 presidency. No automatic ticket for Jonathan in PDP. Inga Ashimi Group says. Top banner says Tinubu governors, APC bigwigs, others storm Imo today to unveil Uzodima's book. Story can be found on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. Away from the Vanguard, straight into the Punch newspaper. Major headline on the Punch says Dangote versus PENGASSAN. NLC mobilizes workers for strike against refinery. Labour places athletes on alert as PENGASSAN shuts down NNPC, NUPRC, NMDPRA offices. Tobana says church members avoided me over Muslim ticket. Remi Tinubu says Nigeria at 65. Federal government cancels Independence Day parade. NNPC. Dangote refinery signed fresh 2-year crude deal. 2027 woeful record will haunt Jonathan, says presidency. Lower banner said court stops bank from releasing or show local government allocations. And lastly, tax reforms exempt food, education, and agric, says FIRS. Away from the Punch, straight into the Nation newspaper. Major headline on the Nation says 2027 Jonathan no match for Tinubu. Presidency cautions ex-president against cheerleaders is only one of the options, says PDP. Top banner says 65th anniversary. Let us continue to believe in Nigeria. Don't cut supply to Dangote refinery. Court orders PENGASSAN. Tinubu governors, APC chiefs in Imo for Uzodima's book. UK diplomats fault genocide report on Nigerian Christian. On the fourth page of the Guardian says gas users groan as PENGASSAN strike crashes power generation exports. Top banner says North gets bulk of 330 billion naira social support, says Tinubu. Federal government cancels Independence parade, insists Nigeria still work in progress. Federal government denies releasing Osun local government allocation as court stops disbursement. Borno overtakes Osun as voter registration hits 6.2 million. Bandits sack thousands in Castina as Uriwa faults peace deals. Lower banner says ASU issues federal government 40-day ultimatum over 7-point demands. And lastly, court declares Patutomi's shadow government unlawful. That's all we have on the front page of the newspapers this morning. Join us after the break for a quick analysis. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News here on Vanguard Live. My name is Ololade Adeomi. With me in the studio today for a brief analysis is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher at Kaja GRA today, Lekki today, and Ilupeju today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ololade. Good morning to all of you.
I look into a top story for today. The National Industrial Court in Abuja has issued an interim injunction restraining PENGASSAN and other defendants from cutting crude or gas supply to the Dangote Petroleum Refinery. Dangote has also filed an ex parte motion arguing that PENGASSAN's planned industrial action would cripple its operation, harm the economy, and undermine energy security. How common or justified is it to find, issues like this happening in a society? Let's start with that.
Well, every interest group wants to protect their turf, and you can't blame both sides at the end of the day for wanting to protect their individual interests. PENGASSAN is protecting the interests of his members. Dangote is trying to protect his investment and of course his ability to repay his loans, his ability to generate a profit. So each one is dug in deep in terms of their own respective areas of interest. However, in the middle of that rough fight, what is forgotten is the national interest, the common interest, because energy security is as important as national. In fact, it borders on national security. If our energy supplies are disrupted, and by energy I mean any and everything from petrol, electricity, gas,
Diesel.
crude oil, you name it, anything that enables mechanical and electrical processes to function. So, by virtue of PENGASSAN having a beef with Dangote in terms of its Dangote's employees unionizing, Dangote doesn't want the employees to unionize. He says he's restructuring. He has released some workers. PENGASSAN is saying that he sacked Nigerian workers, replaced them with expatriates. Dangote is saying that's not true. So there's a lot of back and forth. We really don't know what the truth of the matter is. But what is most important is this: is that both sides need to take a chill pill, consider the national interest. I think PENGASSAN overreached itself by putting 220 million lives at risk for 800 of their members. I think it's too much of too extreme for them to go to the step of cutting off gas and crude oil supply to Dangote refinery. Remember, for too long, we were all waiting for Dangote refinery as the panacea to all our energy woes. That once Dangote uh, refinery comes on stream, all our fuel problems will be solved, electricity problems will be solved, anything to do with energy that and you know that especially fuel is so um, pivotal to our daily lives because it affects everything from transportation to food prices.
To health.
Yeah. So when Dangote came up with this idea and when he was building, we all supported him. The whole country wished him well, especially in light of the fact that our own three national refineries were moribund. They had tried to revive them, tried pouring billions and billions of naira into turnaround maintenance. And those refineries never worked a day, never produced a drop of fuel. So when Dangote now started to do his own, we're all excited because we believe that this would be a major panacea to our problem. So we all were gung ho, supported him, backed him, told government to give him money, give him free land, give him tax abatement, give him anything he wants to just make this thing work. And he did it and he made it work. But ever since that thing has come on stream, it's been a headache, one headache or another. First it was Dangote versus Nupeng, then Dangote versus Dapman, now it's Dangote versus PENGASSAN. I
Dangote and
think,
NLC.
yes, an NLC at one point, I think it was even Dangote versus NNPC at one point. So he's had it rough all the way. And that those turbulent waters that he's facing is inhibiting us from deriving the full benefits that should have come to all of us, the average people in Nigeria who are looking for succor. You know, they are not enabling him. Even if he's a businessman and a capitalist, he's done his numbers. He knows that he can provide this thing and still make his own profit. But in the process of him profiting, we will benefit too. But people are seeing the profit he's going to make and they are not liking it because it's going to block, by virtue of his refinery working, is blocking the chop of some other people. Subsidy gone, fuel leakages blocked, supply
Bunkery.
diversion. You know, so all kinds of things that people are benefiting from before have suddenly been blocked, and they're not happy about that. So you see all kinds of agitations, and he's having all these problems now. Dangote went to court. Industrial court issued an injunction yesterday saying, and I'm sure the court looked at it and said, this is a national security issue. First of all, PENGASSAN doesn't even own the gas. They don't even own the oil. What right do they have to shut it off and say, you know? So that to me is extortionate and is holding the country to ransom. So I think the industrial court was good by granting an injunction and saying, stop, you can't do this. Let us resolve your issues, right? Which I think that what PENGASSAN should have done from the beginning was go to court. What Dangote has done now was go to court and say, this man sacked 800 of our workers, of our members. Yes, he's saying he's reorganizing his companies, why he let them go, but we don't believe. We believe it's because they unionize. That's why he doesn't want them, and the law does not permit him to sack people because they unionize. So they should have gone to court to seek redress, not put all the rest of us under pain simply because they want to protect the interest of 800 of their members. So as of this morning, they are saying they've not yet seen the ruling of the industrial court that's putting an injunction. So they are carrying on with their protest, with their strike, with their blockade of gas supplies and crude supplies to Dangote petroleum. They're carrying it on today. But there may be some hope on the horizon because they had a meeting, all the stakeholders, called by Ministry of Labour.
Yeah.
And the meeting went like yesterday from 2 p.m. or so, went into the late hours of the night. They were deadlocked, but they are continuing that meeting today. So we remain hopeful that when they sit back down at the table today, they'll be able to come up with a compromise that addresses the issues of both parties to satisfaction, so that us, the little grass in the middle of these two elephants that are fighting, so that us, the little grass, don't get hurt irreparably.
Talking about the court order, to what extent can a court order bind, entities like PENGASSAN and the rest?
Well, court orders are respected or are followed based on the respect for the Constitution. Think about it. The court does not have his own military, does not have his own army, does not have his own police to enforce its judgments. The court can write something and say what he wants to say, but how do you enforce it? I mean, we've seen many governments flout court orders. At one point, a court, even back in the Obasanjo regime, a court told him, release Lagos State's allocation. He didn't do it. And what happened to him? Nothing. Yeah. Because the court, so court orders are only as good as the extent that we, the people, respect and fear the Constitution. Because the court derives its powers from the Constitution. Court is not like the executive that has the coercive forces, coercive apparatus of the military that can compel you to do it. If the government says, we don't want you to do this protest tomorrow, and you say you want to insist on doing the protest, the way the industrial court has said, don't do this protest. If it were the executive that said, don't do this protest, and PENGASSAN decides to go forward with it, what will the executive do? They will send out armored personnel carriers, send out police, they will shoot tear gas, they will shoot water cannons. They have the coercive apparatus of government to stop you. But the judiciary does not have that. So judiciary makes pronouncements, right? Judiciary will make pronouncements. It is up to us to respect the authority that emanates from the Constitution. Because of separation of powers, the executive really should not interfere in judicial pronouncements, just like the executive should not interfere in legislative bills and acts that they pass. But at the end of the day, sometimes to enforce a court order that is being flouted, it might take the executive to step in. So if, like, PENGASSAN is now saying, we've not been served with the court order, today they say we've not been served with OC, and they are still carrying on to disrupt energy supply, the executive can say, there's a court order, we are aware, we have seen it, stop this. And if they don't stop, they can now be the ones to enforce that court order. But by and large, the court is the last hope for the common man. That's where everybody goes to. If you feel like there's an injustice, the executive is not doing the right thing, the legislature is not, the court is where everybody goes for final resolution. So we can't afford to be flouting court orders willy-nilly, whether we agree with them or not.
So could PENGASSAN's move be viewed more as a political gambit than a purely labor negotiation tactic that we claim?
Which of his gambits, which of his moves are you talking about? You mean in terms of them having this blockade?
Yes, and also not listening to the court order.
I think at the end of the day, PENGASSAN doesn't care whose ox is God as long as it protects the interests of its members. So yeah, there's some measure of political considerations in PENGASSAN's moves at the moment, because what is politics after all? It's the interests of our people that we're protecting. And so if you look at PENGASSAN, what they're doing, to even say they've not seen the court order and so they won't comply with it, is in and of itself political to some extent, because their objective, their reason for existence is to protect the interests of their members. If they're not able to do so, then they lose relevance. And once they lose relevance, then they no longer have reason to be in office. But look, this entire labor movement of recent times, because PENGASSAN is an offshoot of NLC, all of them come under the larger umbrella of NLC and TUC. Those organizations in recent times have not met up to expectation in terms of fighting for the rights of the average Nigerian. It seems they're more self-interested in protecting their own interests, their very narrow interests. Whereas back in the day of Power Michael Imodu in the 60s, when we had the proper freedom fighters, the proper agitators for workers' rights, they were not wealthy people. They were not rich by any stretch of the imagination because they came to serve and they served for the betterment of everyone. But today's labor movement, they back and back and back and talk about, oh, we're going to strike tomorrow, we're going to shut the country down. Then at night, they go and have a nocturnal meeting with the government and they come back in the morning and say, oh, we suspended our strike because they've agreed to our conditions. Everybody knows what happened behind closed doors, of course. Then there's peace, relative peace for another few months, but the circumstances don't change, our conditions don't improve. So you ask yourself, what did Labour go and fight for that they said they've settled in the middle of the night? And at the end of the day, we are still in the same quandary that we've always been. Then 4 or 5 months later, the same cycle will repeat itself. They go back, they have the night meeting, they settle, but our interests are not protected. So it's very, very political and very, very self-centered and very narrow interest at the end of the day. But I would just beg both parties, both Dangote and the unions, that they should bear in mind the welfare of the Nigerian citizen. In this their rough fight, they should put us first. Dangote, as an industrialist, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, he has loans to cover. He has shareholders to answer to. He has government regulators that are breathing down his neck every day. He's constantly looking for supply of crude all over the world because Nigerian crude does not meet up to, he doesn't have enough. They're not giving, Nigeria has already forward sold so much of our crude in all the loans that we got. And what's left over is not enough to give him the feedstock he needs to produce 650,000 barrels of petrol every day. So he's constantly shopping around the world looking for crude. He's constantly looking for dollars to pay for that crude. So he's already got a big headache on his head, right? So all of a sudden, some truck workers, he bought 2,000 trucks to make things easier for us so that petrol can get directly to the fuel stations at low cost, which helps us. Then he employs 2,000 truck drivers or 4,000 because I think he says it's 2 per truck to drive these trucks. Give them good, I understand that he said he's paying them 4 times the minimum wage. He's paying them very well and give them good benefits, HMO, all this stuff. And these people happily went down to the employment because it's a good job. Then all of a sudden, PENGASSAN comes and says, oh, you're working for the refinery, you're in the oil industry, you must unionize. And there's no businessman in the world who knows that once your employees unionize, they will always agitate in a way that will always affect your bottom line. So there's no real entrepreneur or real employer of labor who's always happy about unionization. But because the Constitution protects the right to unionize, even if I don't like it as an employer of labor, I can't stop it because the Constitution guarantees that right. So reluctantly, we will allow them to do it. But at the same time, we too will put checks and balances in place in our contract of employment to make sure that their activities do not affect our bottom line. Because what will a union agitate for? If I'm already paying you 4 times the minimum wage, 280. I think minimum wage is 70,000 now, times 4. I'm paying you 280, 4 times the minimum wage. I'm giving you all kinds of benefits. You unionize. By next month, you're already agitating that we should double the pay now. Because that's what the union stands for. Because union will get its check-off dues, which is a percentage of that money. They won't care that I'm already paying you more than the rest of the country is paying. So, an employer of labor will always try and resist unionization of its workers. And will also put in checks and balances to make sure that when they do unionize, it doesn't affect its bottom line. And that's what PENGASSAN is fighting about, is that Dangote is over-resisting their efforts to unionize the workers.
If PENGASSAN actually prevails in this issue, what precedent is that setting for the future?
Well, it could scare investors away. It could worry, it could make people reconsider, because I think what labor law says is that if you have more than a certain number of workers, maybe 50, I can't remember, that they can unionize. So that will scare to some extent industrialists who want to set up manufacturing concerns with large pools of workers, because once they unionize, the union by its very existence is always running counter to management. Their demands, their requirements, they will always be at loggerhead with management and ownership. But I think Dangote's position was that It's not saying don't unionize, but you don't have to join PENGASSAN. Set up your own union within, um, because the constitution does not say by force you must join PENGASSAN. It just says if they choose to unionize, you can't stop them. So Dangote is saying, okay, PENGASSAN is saying unionize. Don't join PENGASSAN, but set up your own. Because if you set up your own within here, we can work together because we too will be a member of that union as well. And we can make sure we have harmonious coexistence to where your rights are protected. You two understand as stakeholders the requirements for this refinery to be profitable. Because remember, we've tried it. Look at even this PENGASSAN. In a way, they should be ashamed of themselves. How come, in all this agitation, how come the three Nigerian refineries, they want able to agitate them into production? Are their workers not the ones, are their members not the ones manning Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries? How come in the last 60 years or however many years, since the 70s, those PENGASSAN has not been able to agitate those refineries into production? Why didn't they hold government to ransom when those refineries were not working? Because, well, their members were collecting salary, despite the fact that one single drop of oil or diesel was not coming out of this place. Their workers were collecting salary. And when the workers collect salary, the union, guess what? Check off dues. As long as the union is getting its own, the workers are getting their own. Yeah, with Nigerians, if we don't get any petrol out of it, who cares? So that's a very selfish point of view. So it won't be a very good precedent. If see, at the end of the way, nobody wins it all in any contention. There has to be give and take. So PENGASSAN cannot have his way fully. Dangote too cannot have his way fully. There's got to be a middle of the road solution. So as long as the Ministry of Labour and the other key stakeholders can negotiate with wisdom, give a little to this one, give a little to this one, take a little from this one, take a little from this one, so that at the end of the day, it's a win-win for everybody. Then it won't be a bad precedent per se. Because every engagement, even between husband and wife, between business partners, between worker and employer, there's always negotiation. Nobody can win it all in this life. If you insist that it must be your way or the highway, you end up losing everything. So you've got to be able to give a little bit in order to get.
Given the high stakes, what possible compromise or settlement path should we anticipate? In that they're still having their meeting and they're going to have their meeting again today. What should we anticipate?
Well,
serve as a prophet.
Well, the good thing is, as I was driving to the studio this morning, I was checking petrol stations to see. I hope fuel queues haven't started. There are no fuel queues, and petrol stations are still selling. So it's a good thing, because I heard Festus Osifo, the head of PENGASSAN, who's also the head of TUC, I had him saying on a TV show 2 nights ago that we have enough reserve fuel to where what they are doing here will not affect fuel supply. So Nigerians shouldn't panic. We shouldn't go and panic buy. Petrol stations shouldn't hoard. That because, first of all, PENGASSAN is senior staff members. It's not the tanker drivers. It's not staff. No, there's the senior staff. There are the geologists, the chemical engineers. The really technical senior staff. So that it shouldn't really affect the supply side of finished product at the end of the day. And I'm happy to see that is not happening. So perhaps Nigerians will not be immediately impacted, although I understand that the cutting off of gas supply may have an impact on electricity, which is just as critical as fuel. Because if you don't have electricity, it's probably even worse than not having fuel. So what I would hope to see is that at the end of the day, PENGASSAN calls off the strike. At the end of the day, they rescind their decision to cut off supply to Dangote refinery. At the end of the day, Dangote finds a way to accommodate them, whether it's by reassimilating those 800 workers, maybe under different terms and conditions, maybe reassimilate them, maybe allow them to unionize, but maybe not under PENGASSAN, maybe a different union, a new one that's formed. But what is best and what I hope is that the strike is called off, they find a way to work it out. Dangote is able to continue to receive the feedstock that it requires, because there's no which way you look at it. That refinery, when it is working and when it's producing at optimal levels, will be a benefit to all Nigerians. So we need to do everything in our power to support it to run and to block anything that will stop its ability to run optimally. So that's our hope.
Away from that, we look into a second story. The federal government has cancelled the official Independence Day parade scheduled for Nigeria's 65th anniversary. Instead of the grand parade, alternative arrangements like the ceremonies, speeches, broadcast events will be used to mark the occasion. What do you make of the federal government's decision to cancel the Independence Day parade this
It
year?
came as a shock, and I still don't understand it because the worst part is they didn't give a reason. They had given a reason. I mean, we've had it in the past, I think, under the Goodluck administration, where they didn't hold the parade because of security reasons,
Yeah.
because they had had some bomb threats or some
And then in
intelligence reports that stated that, there could be a security breach if they were to hold the parade, because, Eagle Square in Abuja is very
very
central,
open
a
as
lot of,
well.
it's
Yeah.
open, a lot of people congregate, all the
I think there was
dignitaries.
one in Lagos as well one time, COVID, during COVID, because of health
Yeah,
reasons.
because of
Yeah.
health reasons. So, if they had given a reason, it might sit better with us. But first of all, 65 is a milestone. It's not 58 or 62 or,
61.
no. Even though it's not a round figure, it's not a decade, but it's half a decade. And that's significant. So we're expecting that 65, we would have the parade. Besides, look, it's an event that brings about the sort of national pride that unifies us, because you see the president, he comes up in all the instrumentalities of his office, the prestige of his office. He takes the salute, all our military line up, and they honor the flag, honor the constitution, honor the country. They release doves. There's a gun salute. The Air Force flies by. It is a moment of pride for
Even
all of us.
students marching as well.
Absolutely, students march past. It's a moment of pride for all of us, and it's something that, for a moment, makes us forget our divisions, and we all unify around this one particular event. At that point, we are all Nigerians. There's no APC, there's no PDP, there's no opposition ADC, there's no Muslim, there's no Christian, there's no Northerner, no Southerner, there's no, at that moment, we are all Nigerians, and we're proud to be Nigerians. So, that parade is a unifier. Eh? And since it's, like I say, a milestone year, we're all looking forward to it as kind of like a eureka moment, a catharsis, if you will, where for a minute we forget our issues and we're all one big happy family. So for it to have been unceremoniously cancelled less than 48 hours to the event with no reason given, all they just said was the reforms continue. We cancel the parade. The president will deliver a speech at 7 a.m., but the reforms will continue. It leaves a lot to be desired and makes conspiratorial minds wonder that I hope something is not happening in Abuja that we are not aware of, especially when you look at it in light of the fact that just last week, the president cancelled his working leave, came back early from his working leave. Now, cancelling parade. You look at all these things and you begin to say, is there something happening behind the scenes that we are not aware of? And it's a bit worrisome, really.
So, what are the potential downside to the cancellation?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we'll move on. I mean, it's not a big deal. We'll move on. We'll listen to his speech. We'll hear all the fancy stuff and all the achievements and his hope for tomorrow. And then we'll all go back to bed because it's a public holiday. But rather, in the past, after the speech, we'll be looking forward to everybody gathering and it would have been a moment of excitement that we won't have. But Nigeria, we always find a way, or we're resilient people, we find a way of making up. So we'll move on and do other things during that period of time tomorrow. But it's just a missed opportunity to give us a sense of belonging, to show up our patriotism, to embolden us to know that we're all a part of this project Nigeria and that the future is bright. It's one thing for the president to say it in words. The parade would have shown it and demonstrated it visibly that our future is bright, because the pomp and the pageantry, the ceremonialism of the moment would have lifted our hearts and given us visual hope than audio hope that we will get from hearing a speech.
So, the theme of this year's independence is all hands on deck for a greater nation. How aligned is this message with the government's policy and performance so far?
Well, all hands do need to be on deck because government can't solve every problem. I think as Nigerians, we have abdicated too much responsibility to government. And I think a lot of the buck stops at our individual homes and offices and schools and neighborhoods and communities. I think we should do a lot more as Nigerians for our own developmental objectives. Having said that, when government says all hands on deck, I think that government has not really lived up to that mantra, because in saying all hands on deck, they've asked us to make many sacrifices. They said hope will be renewed. Just tighten your belt for now. Manage these high prices. Manage inflation. Manage lack of jobs. Manage poor healthcare. Manage. The end is in sight. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But the counterweight to that is that government on its own is not seen to be tightening its belt. Rather, we see them living lavishly. The other day, the president attended the coronation of the Olubadan in Ibadan. I think that was on Friday, and came to Lagos after that. And I saw a video, and if you counted the number of vehicles in the president's convoy, granted, the president needs to be made secure. He needs to, any presidential movement needs a lot of logistics and security planning. But I think the number of jeeps, the number of buses, the number of luxury cars in that convoy was just absolutely too lavish for a country that is currently going through economic dire straits. So they've not put all hands on deck, because their own hand in the spending trough is still spending lavishly. Hunger that the president didn't even attend United Nations General Assembly, that he was represented by the vice president. You don't want to know the number of people that accompanied the Nigerian delegation. You don't want to know the size. And each of them has extra code in dollars per day that was allocated to them. So that trip cost millions of dollars to send our representatives to go to the United Nations General Assembly, whereas other countries came with 5, 10 people. So these are the things that make us wonder, that is the government sincere when it says all hands on deck, or is it being tendentious in that we should be the ones to suffer and they continue to enjoy, which is not morally upright, and it's not sustainable. Because if at the end of the day only one side of the equation is bearing the brunt, only one side of the equation is paying the price, and the other side of the equation is just continuing to live the life, one day the equation won't balance. The equation will not balance.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure always.
That was Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher Ikeja GRA Today, Lekki Today, and Ilupeju Today. Remember to follow us on all our social media platforms as seen on your screen, and for up-to-date stories on our website at www.vanguardngr.com. My name is Ololade Adewumi. Have a lovely day.